It's a pleasure to see friends and people who aren't yet friends in our theater. So welcome to 901 Congress. If you know TPPF well, you know that for many years we have focused on policies that lead toward human flourishing. And ultimately, that's the goal of everything we do, which is for policy and regulations, to the extent that those two things have to happen, to lead toward an increase in liberty, a decrease in the size and scope and expense of government, an increase in access to markets for the purpose of human flourishing. So we'll often describe our policies as increasing liberty, and that is a very important aim, don't get me wrong. Freedom is really important. Our Creator hardwired each of us to be free. But the reason that we are free, the reason He wants us to be free, is to flourish in a civil society. And so each year, as we scour the work that we've done in the past and the work that we want to do in the coming year, we look for those opportunities where maybe we ought to get involved. And so I am very, very proud to say that we are joining what I think is one of the most important fights, one that cuts to the very heart of our condition as humans, one that cuts to the very heart of our condition as Americans, as Texans, and that is ending the abomination of human trafficking. So thank you for being here in what is the kickoff event for that effort. In 2016, the Texas Public Policy Foundation launched the Center for Families and Children because we recognize that strong families are the core of a vibrant civil society. That center seeks to promote strong families by advancing responsible policies and also, even more important than the policymaking sphere, leveraging social institutions to address the root causes of family breakup and child mistreatment. Human trafficking, in many ways, is a symptom of the loss of the vibrant family and community relationships we've witnessed over the last several decades. For example, it's estimated that between 20 and 30% of human trafficking victims worldwide are children. Here in Texas alone, there are almost 79,000 minor and youth victims of sex trafficking at any given time. In addition, consider that children in foster care are particularly at risk of becoming victims. It's estimated that at least 50% and perhaps as much as 90% of child sex trafficking victims had been involved with the child welfare system. Operation Innocence Lost, a decades-long anti-trafficking operation conducted by the FBI, found that around 60% of the child victims rescued had been in foster care. And so if you know the work we do, and many of you have been leaders in this effort to end human trafficking, you know that there is much work to be done. Part of a policy solution is, as we like to say here at TPPF, reading reality truthfully. Identifying the problem so that we then can identify solutions. And once we've identified solutions, we collectively, including many of you here today who are leaders already in this effort, building a coalition to address the problem. And so today we're honored to be joined by Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has been a leader not just in Texas but nationwide in the fight against human trafficking. Last year, for example, his office released the training film we will be viewing in just a few moments, entitled Be the One. This film is designed to mobilize all Texans in the fight against human trafficking. To date, it's been viewed by more than 80,000 people in 48 states and 76 countries. You'll enjoy it, as hard-hitting as it is. Following the film, Andrew Brown, our director for the Center for Families and Children, will be leading a panel discussion about the film and how you can help reduce and prevent human trafficking in Texas and beyond. Joining General Paxton on the panel are State Representative Matt Shaheen from Collin County and Susan Peters, the Executive Director of the anti-trafficking nonprofit UnBound. Thanks for being here and enjoy the film.
One educator, recognizing the signs and choosing to report them, was all it took to save her student from sexual exploitation. One neighbor taking action was all it took to free a young woman who had been sold into slavery right next door. One bystander choosing not to look away was all it took to rescue a 13-year-old who was tied to a bed, drugged, and sold for sex. One person, one moment, one act that saved a life. You are about to see the stories of these real Texans who chose to be the one in the fight to stop human trafficking in our state.
I'm 22, I was 13 at the time. Until this day, in ways, it still affects me. Before it happened to me, I knew it happened, but I never knew that it would happen to me.
We start tonight with a human trafficking concern right here in Odessa.
An Amarillo man is jailed in Wichita County after a human trafficking operation conducted by law enforcement agencies in West Texas.
It's constantly moving throughout the country, even here in El Paso.
We're not just talking about forced prostitution, but forced labor.
Human trafficking knows no race, knows no gender, knows no ethnicity.
And it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're an adult, whether you're a child.
I'm here to tell you it happens everywhere. It happens in the smallest of towns. It happens in the largest of cities.
It's not a Madisonville thing, but if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
Human trafficking is essentially the debasement of humanity. It is humanity at our worst.
It's happening in your backyard and right next door to you, and you cannot ignore it. Somebody's life depends on you.
The very first trafficking case that was tried in San Antonio, Texas, involved a 13-year-old child. Human trafficking was not a word that anyone in San Antonio knew, but they learned about it through her testimony.
It actually started like any other day. Like, I woke up, a friend called me, "Can you go with me over here?" Something that I do every day, like people I hang around with every day. And I went. We were actually there to buy drugs. I remember walking in, talking, and asked if I could use the bathroom. I remember using the bathroom, and when I tried getting out, I couldn't. I tried opening the door, like messing with the lock, and it wouldn't open. It was a weird looking door. Well, it had a lock on the outside. I heard them tell my friend that I had already left. So she ended up leaving. And I remember them coming to the restroom and opening the door. And just right there, I guess something snapped in my head what was going on. So I tried to run and like fight and kick, but I was too small. It was two grown men.
It's just that girl. She's that type of kid. Well, what is that exactly? She's somebody's baby. She's somebody's daughter. They're somebody's son. And they matter. All of them matter. And nobody should exploit people at their lowest point.
Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It is the exploitation of men, women, and children by third parties for their own profit or gain.
This is a problem, a social problem, and a crime that needs all of us to play our part.
It's a planned community, so the bottom line is that everybody that came here was just suburbia. It was, attracted families. That was the whole idea of the Woodlands. So it does tend to be very quiet, relatively boring, and a lot of people call it a bubble. This street, specifically with only the 6 houses, we're usually just sitting out here with the kids playing around. So if there is ever a car that comes in, which is only really 4 families that ever come in or out, we get up and we move. So it's a huge difference when there's multiple cars coming in all the time, like we're constantly getting up and getting down.
For the most part, every person that's coming by, and if there's a strange car, everyone that's sitting out here, we're all sort of, who is that? So I got tired of walking to the window every 30 minutes and taking photos with my iPhone of the cars coming and going. We had gotten our father-in-law a deer cam, and I set it up, and after the first day I came in and I put the memory card in, and I think it was like 42 cars had come in and out of our street. This car is interesting because it was the owners of the house, and they would come once a week to drop off groceries, and that was probably the only car that you would notice again and again. It was amazing to see all of the high-end cars coming in Porsches to Maseratis to broken down pickup trucks to cars with stickers that their children were on the honor roll at our local school. I did a very simple search. All I did was search for the house. And I came across an ad on Backpage.com. And actually on this page, I typed in Rolling Mill. And sure enough, it came up. You know, just a simple search of the Woodlands. Even today, you're going to find escorts and all kinds of things. But it was very alarming to see my street name on here with this ad, with these women and the services that they were providing. It was quite shocking.
The neighbors started contacting the sheriff's office and started saying, hey, there's something wrong with this house. There's something not right. There's a lot of men going in and out. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of traffic after hours, which is very unusual in this neighborhood because this house is located on a cul-de-sac. I can recall calling my supervisor and telling him, you're not going to believe this. We have a human trafficking case in the Woodlands. One of the realities that we discovered during the investigation is these women being held against their will were being raped daily, over and over again, at this residence.
They'd pull in and then another car would pull in and they'd wait and the one car would back out and it was a constant flow of traffic. It was like a locust. They just kept coming and coming, and then when we knew exactly what was happening in there with these women, it was really disheartening, especially having two daughters. It's very frightening.
And we realized that these same girls were being transferred not only in Montgomery County, but also to Harris County and being sold in other locations for sex over and over again from one spot to another spot. And this led to an even larger investigation that we discovered was in New York. And we discovered that these women were being brought in for this purpose from China.
And we have another breaking news alert out of Montgomery County. 4 arrests linked to a human trafficking bust.
They discovered 4 different locations the girls were being taken to.
Prosecutors say in this case they found 8 victims, women who are Chinese nationals around 20 to 30 years old.
We're our brother's keeper. We're supposed to watch out for each other. And that's what these neighbors did. And they shut down an organization that was a multi-million-dollar organization that did nothing but hurt people.
The day that I was watching the news and I saw the bust had happened, I was ecstatic.
With one phone call, he literally changed everything.
They took me out the restroom. And I remember just being so scared because I didn't know what was going to happen. I fought, I kicked, I screamed. It's like nobody heard me. They tied me up to the bed. And they just took turns raping me. For the first couple of days, it was just them two. And then after that, they would be at the door, and other guys that would come to buy drugs, they would tell them, pay me, and you could basically rape her. And I remember I would kick and scream, but I really couldn't do nothing because I was tied up. And after that, it was like day in, day out, all like different guys would just come in and rape me. And I remember when I guess they got tired of me fighting and kicking, even though I couldn't really, it wasn't doing nothing. They started shooting me up with drugs. And at that point, I guess after so much of it, I couldn't fight no more. I remember them threatening me with a knife, telling me they would kill me. And I remember at one point, I told him, just do it. Because I had already given up hope of me getting out. Even though after them shooting me up with so much drugs and me not being able to feel it, I knew it was happening.
Life in prison or the death penalty could await the truck driver charged with transporting at least 39 illegal immigrants in a sweltering semi-truck from Laredo here to San Antonio.
But as we looked at the list of crimes, we did not see human trafficking listed.
Smuggling and trafficking are two entirely different crimes. Smuggling or illegal entry is a crime against the border of a nation or against the sovereignty of a nation. Human trafficking, on the other hand, is a crime against a human being. Smuggling or illegal entry requires movement. You don't have to be transported to be trafficked. You can be trafficked in your own home.
And that breaking news coming as we've just learned that the couple accused of holding their nanny hostage for years has been granted bond and will be released from jail.
Folks who exploit other people for a profit, they do so for that profit, and will do that in any industry where they think they can make money off someone else that they're exploiting.
Court documents show the woman worked nearly 20 hours a day here inside the family's home in a gated neighborhood in Katy, where prosecutors say the woman was mentally and physically abused, was refused access to a phone, and was only allowed outside twice a day to walk the couple's children as an unpaid nanny.
It really is about using lies, deception, abuse, be it physical or sexual abuse, to make someone do some kind of work for a profit.
That woman has now been rescued from what is being called a human trafficking situation.
There have been multiple cases where immigrants have been promised the American dream. They've been promised a green card where they have the opportunity to come and work in a satisfying position that they can use to protect and take care of their family.
It was an offer he just couldn't pass up.
They said me they're going to pay me $15 the hour and they're going to give me 60-hour guarantee a week. And they didn't pay me the 15 promise, they paid me $6 the hour, and they didn't give me the 60-hour guarantee, they gave me only 20.
Traffickers will use a variety of tactics, both to recruit victims into a labor trafficking situation and or to maintain them there and to maintain control over them so that they keep working. One might be taking advantage of the vulnerability of someone. So maybe someone is vulnerable because they've fled their home country.
We complain, you know, and the immediately thing that the employer did is to threaten me. And threat the group of workers said, you don't like this, I'm going to send you back to your country.
They may take advantage of someone's vulnerability because they have substance abuse issues and or poverty, simple poverty, and or they're faced with some other kind of oppression. Traffickers identify vulnerability in someone and exploit that vulnerability.
It can be in the sex industry, or it can be in other industries that are considered legal industries like agriculture, hotel work, construction, food processing, potentially any industry.
If someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to make someone else do some kind of work or labor or commercial sex activity, that is considered human trafficking. A common misconception about human trafficking is that it only affects women and girls. And yet, what we know from the research and we know from the practice working with victims and survivors is that it also affects men and boys.
This research is unique. It's non-generic. It's Texas-specific. And it's innovative because few states have any research like this that can say it is specific to its state. What we found is the prevalence is 79,000 minor and youth victims of sex trafficking. What we found in labor trafficking, 234,000 labor trafficking victims. I mean, those numbers are astronomical for the state of Texas.
Minor and youth sex trafficking costs the state of Texas approximately $6.6 billion over victims' lifetimes, and traffickers steal approximately $600 million annually from victims of labor trafficking in Texas.
Madisonville is a town of approximately just under 5,000 people. It's a quiet, nurturing, close-knit community.
It is the idyllic community where people want to come here and retire, or people want to come here and this is where they want to raise their children because it's such a warm and gentle community. It's safe.
Right here. If I had to describe Madisonville, it would be community. I love this town. I love Madisonville. But if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. It really can.
What's interesting about the Madisonville case and how one person can make a difference. One citizen of Madisonville reached out to law enforcement because she saw something that disturbed her. She saw what she believed was a young child, a young girl getting assaulted.
Carrie Rose saw something that she saw didn't look right, and her first thought was, I don't know if this is anything, so I won't say anything.
I was getting ready to turn right onto my road, and I noticed a really high-end Mercedes. So when I drove past, I noticed that there was a young blonde girl. She's screaming, help me, like help me. She's screaming like I could hear her. And so I was so shook up that I pulled over and I called 911, and by this time they did pull out into traffic. They were going towards 45. And so I just called and I said, I don't know what I just witnessed, but you have to come fast. There's a Mercedes, they're headed towards 45, and they're holding someone against their will. You know, at first, I was like, I don't know what I just witnessed, but it took me 10 seconds to be like, I have to be that person's voice.
This was a basic case of a 33-year-old, approximately female here in Madisonville that was literally running a brothel. On a nice, quiet residential street. She was, had supplying drugs, supplying a roof over people's heads, supplying food to numerous transient and homeless females coming through the Houston area and on a circuit. And one of those such females was a child in which she had been literally grooming into prostitution since this girl was 12 years old. In fact, her mother, the girl's mother, introduced her to Jennifer Kelly. And Jennifer Kelly taught her prostitution, literally became her best friend, had a photo of her above her headboard in her bedroom of the child, and the child even got her name tattooed on her.
Jennifer was the Madisonville pimp.
And she's sitting in prison this day because of the actions of one person. Literally 2 children were saved. Human trafficking.
You know, I had the
is
prosecutor sit across from me today, and at the end of our conversation, he looked at me and he said, because of that phone call and because I was willing, that I saved 2 girls' lives that day. You think about it happening in your neighborhood, on your street, when you witness something like I witnessed that day, it changes you. It changes everything.
I hope the day comes maybe where maybe our victim is 25 years down the road and maybe she has kids of her own, and it's at that point maybe for the first time she realized that somebody was a voice for her back when she didn't know that she needed a voice.
And you may be the only voice that they have. It's important. I'm realizing that now. It's really, really important to speak up and to be aware.
My name is Antoine Sattler. I've been driving the truck for 22 years. Truck drivers, we're all over the country, and so I wanted to take this opportunity not only while I am out here on the road driving and you know, making sure that America gets their goods and doing a job to support my family, but maybe I can also make a difference in someone else's life out here while I'm performing my job. Five years ago, before the training, if I would see anything on the road, I would pretty much say, oh man, that's a bad choice. You know, maybe the local authorities will handle it. Now that I've had the training with Truckers Against Trafficking, you realize that it's not a choice. And so having that training, now you can actually kind of reach out and try to get them the help that they need. At Walmart here, we have the 800 number that's posted on the side of our tractors. Anytime that we see any questionable activity, we can give the hotline number a call and try to get these people help. Some of the red flags, if you're at a rest area or a truck stop, you may see maybe a minivan or maybe a large SUV kind of parked amongst the driving area here, the parking area where the drivers are here taking their breaks, and that's some of the things you can look out for. Even your people that drive buses and RVs, people on vacation. If you see something, report it, say something. Don't be silent. You could be saving someone's life. I'm just one of hundreds of thousands of drivers out here today on the road. Just think if we all put our eyes and ears to this problem, what we can do to eradicate the human trafficking problem in this country.
I had already knew Bobby from the store where I used to hang out, S&J's. Before that, I had always pictured him as like a big brother, because he would always tell me, you're too young to be out here, like go home. What are you doing? Go to school, do something. This is not the life you want. I think I was already there going on about 2 weeks. And I remember when he walked in the door. Even though I had already given up on getting out and anyone ever helping me, that hurt. I remember crying, and in my head, all I was saying was, why? Like, out of all people, you, the one that I pictured as my brother. And I remember him, when Spider closed the door, he picks up his pants, because I guess he was trying to act like he was going to, but when he made sure the door was closed, he told me, he goes, what happened? Like, I'm gonna get you out of here. He goes, I'm gonna leave, but I'm coming back. And I remember telling him, like, no, like, don't leave me here. He's like, I promise I'm coming back. And I honestly didn't think he was gonna come back, but he did. Spider had left, I guess, to go get something that he didn't have. And I remember he's like, can you get up? And I tried and I couldn't. He's like, just come on. And I remember I was running, and I remember I stopped and I looked back and I see Spider coming. And I got so scared that I froze, and I told him, no, no. He's like, come on. He goes, I'm not gonna let nothing happen to you. And we ran to he said it was his sister, Lucy. And they like helped me like clean me and like take a shower and everything. They gave me clothes.
Bobby Ojeda took the time to see a child in need. He could have walked away, and he made the difference. And because of that, she is alive today, because of Bobby Ojeda.
Human trafficking is a persistent problem in Houston.
Human trafficking is a problem in Houston on a lot of different levels. Top of the list, of course.
We're one of 2 cities in the country with 2 international airports within our geographical limits, and there are a number of highways in and out of the city of Houston. Our waterways, we're right here at the port, which make us a prime area, so to speak, for human trafficking. People, for example, engage in sex trafficking. That's an everyday phenomenon that we're trying to reduce. People being victimized in terms of labor practices. That can occur almost every single day, sometimes closer to you than what you may realize. We've got about 22,000 plus employees that we have worked with, trained to be more aware of human trafficking and to be proactive and work on the preventive end. We have worked to bring in the external partners, like the taxi industry, and so they've been generating emails and text messages.
We send out text and email blasts to our drivers to give them the warning signs and what to look for in regards to human trafficking. We have 50 cabs in the Houston area that have sign backs on them, and these cabs generate about 9 to 12 visual impressions per mile they drive.
But you have these taxis that are traveling on our streets, interacting with people in real time on a daily basis, and that they represent an additional set of eyes and ears, and they are texting and emailing and providing information. You know, you don't want to just be the hub for, you want to be the hub for the solutions. And that's our goal. We believe we can eliminate trafficking in the city of Houston if everyone does his or her part. And it's about getting people engaged, getting people to be in a proactive position, and one person can make a difference. Can you imagine what 2 or 3 can do?
I think it's important to remember that while investigators and prosecutors and social workers and counselors are doing great work against human trafficking, they cannot do it alone. They can't be the eyes and the ears on the street, in the neighborhoods, in the nail salon, out on the farm, to really recognize when things are not right.
You know, tonight it's the weekend. We are working. This is our non-traditional shift. So Backpage, if you don't know anything about it, I call it the other Craigslist. It's where you can find the people that are offering sexual services. A lot of these are adults. Some are minors. Picking them out is a little bit of a challenge. So this one is advertising at 18 years old. There's her telephone number. Matter of fact, we know this kid. My name's Eliseo Mata. I'm with Bexar County Juvenile Probation with the gang unit. Besides the traditional duties that we have, which is going to be checking on some kids that are on probation and have curfews. Probation. And then there's an actual case that we want to try to take a stab into tonight. If we can locate her.
It's an ad taken off Backpage that Eliseo found. He knows this youngster. It says 19, but her age is, what? 15. 15.
Gangs who used to primarily traffic guns and drugs are now turning to trafficking children. Because unlike a bag of cocaine, once you sell it, it's gone, you can sell a child over and over and over again.
We're doing a whole lot more than just chasing down a little bit of drugs or, people who are violating their probation. We're fighting the big stuff, which is what I call the commercial sexual exploitation of kids.
I talk to a lot of parents who think, oh, this happens only to kids in those neighborhoods or kids who are in foster care, and actually, no, it doesn't.
All children are at risk for human trafficking, but there are certain risk factors that heighten that risk. Kids that are truant, kids that are homeless, kids that have been turned out or have run away from their homes, kids with learning disabilities, mental disabilities, physical disabilities, kids with addictions. The key that makes children most at risk for trafficking is accessibility. If the trafficker can access you away from the people that are supposed to protect you.
I was an assistant principal at the time, and my job was to ensure, first and foremost, the safety of students. My relationship with Kay was one that was quite unique. This was a student that was very independent, was very bubbly, very energetic. She never got in trouble at school. There were never any issues at school. Great attendance, great grades. Things began to take a turn in a negative way she started to let her grades slip. There were increased absences. Then that turned into flat out absenteeism. She was quiet when I did see her. She was nervous. Her physical appearance had changed drastically. I asked her, "Who's hurting you?" She told me, "You will never know. I promise you, Miss Yamaguchi, you will never find out who's hurting me."
What the text said was you need to contact these administrators in reference to a young girl who's possibly being pimped out in Pleasanton and Stockdale. It's a high school, beautiful campus, probably upper middle class to middle class kiddos that go there.
Then one day she came in, and we were working at that point with the detectives at the time, so I was able to stall her, and then that's when the vehicle was searched and the father's phone was found.
It was her father. He had been recently released from prison, so she didn't know her father. She yearned for the love of her dad, and he came out and he exploited that. That's a tough weapon to defeat, is love, caring, all the emotions. And now you're gaining that from your trafficker. Why would you want to see that go away? You wouldn't, so you protect them. you protect them. And that's why it's tough for us as law enforcement to beat down those walls, to find the victims. They don't self-identify. So it's the others, like the administrators at Steele, that saw the signs and they knew something wasn't right and somebody needed to look into it because that kid is worth it. Every kid is worth it. They don't get to pick what cards are dealt to them. And you have people that are bad that exploit that. They see the hands that are dealt. It's almost like they can be mind readers and they can pick out these kids. So you have got to be the one and continue to break through the walls. And when you're not getting the right response, you got to keep making another phone call, as Ruth Yamaguchi did. Ruth Yamaguchi, she's the reason. She's the reason why Kay's father is doing life in prison and that young girl was saved. There's no telling how many kids she saved.
In today's world, teaching kids internet safety is just something we have to do. We all need to care about this issue because all of the children in our lives are at risk.
I think you know that we brought everyone together today to talk about human trafficking.
How old were you guys when you guys got your first phone?
10.
6th grade.
12, probably.
I was 12.
12.
Yeah.
I've seen like 7-year-olds with iPhones.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So how many of you, just out of curiosity, have any kind of parental restriction on your phone at all? One.
What kind of restriction? Now I feel like the loser.
Your parent would disagree. Yes. So what kind of restrictions? What can't you do?
Well, they have like a cutoff time for me at night. So when it's past 10 o'clock, I have to turn my phone. I can't take it with me to bed. I have to leave it out charging by my door in like the living room.
It's very typical for teenagers to get upset with their parents because there's some rule or something that they don't agree with. So you have a stranger on the outside who's giving you a promise of something better. So you can come live with me. There will be no rules. You can have your phone 24/7. We can travel. And so that's very alluring to children who are searching for some acceptance from some adult.
I'm guessing maybe most of you, if not all of you, have Snapchat or Instagram or something along those lines.
What do you use the most? What's your favorite?
Instagram. Twitter.
The tools of a trafficker on the internet are too many to list. Any social media site, chat rooms, any number of forums.
We live in a society where exploiters can access our kids not only in the malls and in youth shelters, but also in social media apps, in interactive games that they are constantly playing online. And so it's become much more efficient for traffickers and exploiters to access kids that way.
Me and my friend made this group chat on this messaging app, and it's like an open group chat, so if anyone looks up the tag for it, they can just join it. And then people just started like adding themselves to it and coming into it. From their profile picture, these are like grown men. These are not high schoolers. They'll contact me or they'll message me because they can see my account, and they'll be like, hey, what's up?
And your profile picture is you?
Yes.
So they know that you are not an adult woman?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're looking for kids who are spending a lot of time on the social media apps, who are maybe sharing a little too much, who seem to be reaching out for someone to pay attention to them. They can tell that the parents aren't really watching, aren't really monitoring what they're doing online.
The people that are trying to lure young people aren't out there showing the ugly side of themselves, the predator sides of themselves. They're showing young people exactly what they want them to see. They're grooming them. They're looking for opportunity to maybe get them away from the adults in their life.
So in 7th grade, when I was obsessed with being famous, some guy DM'd me asking me if I wanted to become a star. And I was like, oh, yeah, me being the naive little 7th grader. I was like, oh, yes, totally, He wants information, his address, and everything. So she was my mom. She was like, oh my God, block him. So we did. The next day, he made another account and then DM'd me again.
I would say traffickers cast a wide net. They'll send lots of friend requests, lots of follow requests, make lots of comments. They'll cast their net wide, and all they need is one. And whether it's general conversation over a couple hours, a few weeks, a few months, each victim is different. It's so common nowadays for teens and kids to build relationships online, whether they think they know that person or that person seems to have something in common with some of their interest or another friend. And so they allow that person into their social media world, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, you name it, any of those, and they think they're talking to someone that they don't really know.
My phone's at 1%, but I actually have someone right now who's trying to follow me and I don't know who they are, and it's been pending for like weeks, and I'm still trying to figure out who it is.
When I talk to parents about the internet, I usually start by talking about some scary person who comes to your front door, knocks on it, and asks to talk to your 12-year-old child. You would look at them, slam the door on their face, and probably call the police. But unfortunately, that same person has access to your 12-year-old son as he's on his PlayStation playing his video games with complete and total strangers that you've never met.
I would tell parents that it's imperative that they know what their kids are doing. If you're going to provide your child, your teen, with access to the internet, whether it's a tablet, a cell phone, a computer, it's imperative that you as the parent or the guardian or the influential person in that child's life to know what they're doing and who they're interacting with.
What are some of the apps that kids hide from their parents?
Snapchat.
I think Snapchat's
number one, probably. Like on my phone, because I have an Android, you can hide apps. Like if you go to your menu and then you tap on like the dots in the corner, you can hide apps, and unless you actually click show hidden apps, like you can't see them anywhere on your phone.
They've got to have adults, whether it's a trusted teacher or a counselor or a parent, who they can come to and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do I do about it?
I am Tanya Stafford. I was sold at the age of 13 by my mom for drugs. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. We are headed to the last house that I was kept for 8 of those 10 years. So we are headed to Nachita Street over here in Pleasant Grove. It's a part of Dallas. So this is the house that I was kept in for 10 years, 8 of the 10 years. And this is Elnita's house, my neighbor that saved me. As the Bible speaks of, love thy neighbor like you love yourself, and that's what she did for me. So if it had not been for Elnita Hamilton, I would probably be dead today. I would probably be dead today. How he kept me for 10 years is beating, rape, threat of killing me and burying me in the backyard and somebody not knowing where I'm at. If you leave, I'll find you. You can't get away from me. Your mama didn't want you. Your mama sold you to me. Nobody wants you, nobody cares about you. All those years, 10 years, that's all I heard. And you have to understand, I heard that from my mama too.
They don't have a positive relationship in their entire life. There is no one for them to reach out to. I mean, at least they think that, right? They believe that.
Human trafficking is really about the dynamics of the exploiter with the victim.
But I wasn't chained up. I was chained in my mind though, as far as the fear. I was raped on a regular basis, told what to do, when to do, how to do, and if I did not get beat and raped.
You know, once you've been beaten, you don't have to be beaten that many more times to know that the beating's coming. So you do what you need to do, or you just defer to that person.
I'm gonna stay right there and reluctant to receive your help. If you're just trying to help me, it's how much are you gonna help me? Are you gonna re-victimize me? What do you want? What do you want? Because if somebody asked me if I did need some help, the first thing in my mind is because I was trained, they don't want anything but sex from you too.
Don't pepper them with questions. Don't sit there and try to pry. The question is building that relationship. Do you care about them as an individual? When that person knows that you love them for who they are, then that gives them the ability to share with you things that they wouldn't otherwise share.
When we are out in the community, do we recognize those folks that usually are invisible to us, those that live in the margins of our world? Do we look at them? Do we look them in the eye and have a real conversation with them? Do we ask them how their day is and pay attention to how their day is? You know, to solve this vile issue of human trafficking, it's about relationships.
And Elnita was persistent with asking, how am I today? Are you okay today? What Elnita offered me to get out that situation was friendship. First it came friendship. Well, first she built a relationship with helping me to trust her. If I trust you and you don't want anything from me, I'm gonna tell you everything. I will spill everything. I will tell it on everybody. And so I was taking out the trash and she was getting in her car to go to work. And she asked me, was I okay? I told her, I looked around, make sure he wasn't there. And then I told her I needed help. I needed help. Girls like me are kept. It's happening in your backyard and right next door to you. And you cannot ignore it. You can't ignore it. Somebody's life depends on you.
We're on Vargas, not even 2 houses from where I was raped and used for human trafficking and sold for sex. Since it happened, I have not come over here. Kirsta Melton. To me, she's the best person I've ever met. Because she believed me. And I remember her promising me that she would put them away to where they wouldn't get out.
She's only 17 years old, but prosecutors say at 13, she was a child sex slave.
Did they sell you to other guys?
Yes.
Investigators say brothers Bobby and Juan Moreno locked the girl in a bathroom after she went to their East Side home. The girl says both men repeatedly raped her and told her cruel things.
And I deserved it.
Living in fear, the teen says the Moreno brothers threatened her and her family if she ever spoke out.
If I ever try to get away and I said anything, something was going to happen to me or my brothers.
The state is expected to rest its case on Monday. Now, if convicted, Moreno is facing life in prison. His brother Juan Moreno is serving 4 life sentences.
And then that jury went back and they deliberated. And they gave life sentences across the board. And this jury stayed. They stayed to talk. And they looked at me and they said, you tell her that we gave life because she was worth it. She has sacrificed on behalf of other people. The pain of telling her story, the struggle to tell that story and relive those moments in her life, she did it because it will help others. She is sharing this story specifically so that no one has to suffer what she has.
How can you be the one? Pay attention to the people in your community, your surroundings, and report red flag behaviors. Do not wait to call. Make your report timely. Those moments matter. Don't approach traffickers yourself. That can place you, the victim, and any future prosecution in danger. If the conduct you have observed is an emergency, call 911 and tell them you believe you have observed human trafficking. Don't worry about being wrong. Your call may be the one that saves a life. If it's not an emergency or you need to remain anonymous, Call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-3737-888. Provide actionable information, descriptions of cars, descriptions of people, when and where you saw the conduct, and take a picture if you can safely do so. Those details make a difference.
You are the one person, the one moment, and the one act who can save a life. You have the power to be the one.
Speak up. Speak up. It takes one voice, and it doesn't cost a dime.
Be the one in your city.
Be the one in your high school.
Be the one on the road.
Be the one in your neighborhood.
Be the one on your street.
Be the one for your neighbor.
Be the one to save a life like mine.
Thank you all very much for being here in
Susan.
this important conversation.
Good to see you.
My name is Andrew Brown. I'm the director of the Center for Families and Children here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And I'm honored to be joined by an incredible panel of Texans who are in the arena and leading the fight against the plague of human trafficking. Attorney General Ken Paxton is the 51st Attorney General of the state of Texas. As the state's top law enforcement officer, General Paxton is focused on protecting Texans, upholding Texas laws and the Constitution. His first major initiative after assuming office was the formation of a special unit dedicated to combating human trafficking in our state. This unit shut down Backpage.com, the largest online sex trafficking marketplace in the United States, and so far has secured multiple felony convictions amounting to 327 years of prison time for traffickers. State Representative Matt Shaheen serves the citizens of District 66, which encompasses West Plano and far north Dallas. He serves on the House committees on government transparency and operations and international trade and intergovernmental affairs. Representative Shaheen is a technology executive with 30 years experience, specializing in corporate digital transformations. He and his wife Robin have 3 children. They attend Prestonwood Baptist Church, where Matt serves as a deacon and as an usher, as well as on the church's Crisis Pregnancy Board. Susan Peters is the executive director of UnBound, an anti-human trafficking organization founded in Waco in 2012. Susan oversees UnBound's work mobilizing local communities to combat trafficking in 5 U.S. cities and Mongolia. She's also the co-founder and chair of the Heart of Texas Human Trafficking Coalition. She received her master's degree in global leadership from Fuller Theological Seminary and has served as a pastor at Antioch Community Church since 2006. Susan and her husband of 30 years, Marty, live in Waco, where they've raised their 4 daughters. Please join me in welcoming our panelists today. Attorney General Paxton, thank you for being here, but most importantly, thank you for your courageous leadership on this issue.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start the conversation with you. What's the reaction been to Be the One since it was released?
You know, I think, first of all, you saw it. I think people are surprised that it was done by a government entity because I think it's been very effective at communicating a message, one, that this is a real issue affecting real people, and they see faces and they see people that have been devastated by this. It has an impact. And second, it suggests ways that maybe you could step up. All these stories are about people that weren't involved in dealing with human trafficking, that just paid attention and stepped up and help somebody. So that's the message that we wanted to communicate, and hopefully get people interested enough that they would learn a little bit, go to our website, go to their website, and learn about the warning signs so that you can be aware and you can be the one to stop human trafficking in Texas and really across this nation, across the world.
As we mentioned off the top, you started a human trafficking task force as one of your first acts as Attorney General. What results have you seen so far from that initiative?
So they've been busy. I didn't have any money to start this. It took me about a year to get it off the ground. But I had learned about this issue in the Texas legislature. Senator Van de Putte, Democrat, was carrying a human trafficking bill. I didn't know anything about it. I sat in my committee and listened to it, and I was horrified about what was going on. And I asked her if she had any Republican help. She said no. I said, well, sign me up. And so we got that through, and I promised myself if I ever had another opportunity to do something about it, I would. And it took me about a year to find the right prosecutors. We have 3 prosecutors, and we have 4 others in our trafficking unit. It wasn't a legislative initiative. It's something I wanted to do. And I think Matt will tell you they are now, in this next budget, appropriating a little over $2 million for us to continue this effort. But we've had success. In the first 8 months, as we mentioned, we shut down we arrested the CEO and shut down Backpage.com, which we believed was the largest online purveyor of human trafficking and prostitution in the world. We think they were involved in 97 countries, responsible for about 73% of the calls to the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And so we targeted what we thought was the worst offender, and to send a message. Obviously, somebody else can step into that space, but we wanted them to know that we would be out there and we would be working to stop them. We've also had, we've had dozens of prosecutions. We've got a backlog of prosecutions, largely because we don't have the resources to do them all, and that's why we're asking the legislature to give us a little help, and it looks like we're going to get some of the help that we need.
That's great. Clearly, Texas is making incredible strides in the fight against human trafficking and is really leading amongst the states in taking this issue on straight ahead. What are some of the challenges that we still face that need to be addressed?
So I think awareness, it's an issue that I think a lot of people think is, it's just coming across the border, maybe that's just it, or it's somewhere else in the world or some other state. Texas is number 2 in the nation for human trafficking. Houston is the worst city. So it is affecting us right here in Austin. It's affecting us in every city in Texas. And I think just the biggest challenge is making it relevant to people enough that they pay attention. Obviously we had a horrible scourge in this country of human slavery until the 1860s. And finally we stood up and said no more of this. This obviously is something that we should do the same with. We should be stopping it, not just in Texas, but this ought to be something that should not go on in our country, and it ought to be something that internationally should not go on.
Well, again, thank you very much for your leadership on this issue. Representative Shaheen, I'd like to turn to you. By my count, there have been close to 50 bills so far filed in the legislature this year that deal with trafficking in some way. What are some of the major initiatives that the legislature is taking up this session?
I think if you look at a lot of the bills that have been filed this session, or even in previous sessions, a lot of it has to do with just with awareness and training. So a lot, if you think about all the individuals that might be out there, just by the nature of their job, they will come in contact with people that are victims of human trafficking, right? So there's legislation around there, either mandating some training, building awareness, all those types of things. So you'll see a lot of those pieces of legislation, both this current session as well as the previous sessions. The other thing that we're making really gains from a legislative perspective is victim assistance. So, and there's been a lot of great leadership in the Texas House with respect to human trafficking. Tam Parker, who's a legislator just next door to me in Denton County, has actually worked on past. I was happy to help him when I served on criminal jurisprudence, where if you are a woman who's been convicted of prostitution in the state of Texas, however, you are in prostitution because you're a victim of human trafficking, that's a defense. And not only is it a defense, but we can actually go back and have a judge expunge your record. In fact, this organization right here, I see Mark back there, played a very prominent role in those types of initiatives. So we continue to look at broadly first-time nonviolent offenders in the criminal jurisprudence, criminal justice system, see what kind of reforms that we can make. So, but those are the types of legislation that we're currently looking at. I've got a piece of legislation that we're really focused on. But the statistics in Texas are just horrific. I mean, 25% of the victims nationally are here in our state. And I saw the 1-800 number for the national hotline. Guess where the majority of those calls come from? But Texas.
You mentioned the bill that you filed. It's House Bill number 934.
Yeah.
It makes it a second-degree felony to engage in sexual conduct with a person or a child who has been trafficked.
Yeah.
So if your bill becomes law, how is that going to contribute to solving the problem?
So what we're trying to do is, and again, we're building an awareness. We're helping the victims of human trafficking. The other area that we need to tackle is the demand generation, right? It's the demand that's out there for human trafficking, for prostitution. And so what this legislation does is it increases the penalty. So in other words, if you have an individual in the state of Texas that engages or solicits a prostitute, today that penalty is a Class B misdemeanor, so you can serve up to about 6 months in jail, pay about $2,000 fine. What this legislation does is if it's discovered that that prostitute is in that line of business because she's a victim of human trafficking, that becomes a second-degree felony. Second-degree felony, that means you're going to serve a minimum of 2 years and pay a $10,000 fine. So what it does is we're tackling the demand side. It now makes it in the state of Texas, God willing this will pass, but it will make it in the state of Texas a much riskier proposition engaging or soliciting a prostitute. So if that woman is a victim of human trafficking, the penalty to that male is going to be equivalent to as if he had trafficked that woman himself.
It's an important session, and it's important work that you all are doing.
Yep.
We're grateful that you're meeting the fight on that. For me, one of the most powerful moments of the film was when Jessica described her rescue by Bobby Ojeda. And for me, that moment revealed, I think, one of the themes of the film, that it's not about waiting for a government program to step in and save us. That it's the simple actions of individual people, of community institutions that can really make a dent in this problem of human trafficking. Jessica wasn't rescued because we had a great government program that came in and pulled her out. She was rescued because Bobby befriended her at the corner store where they all hung out, and he noticed when she stopped coming around and started asking questions. And he had the courage to go into the viper's nest and pull her out. So I want to turn to Susan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so one of the things that speaks to, we have 7 people in a state of 28 million people in my office dealing with that. That is not going to stop human trafficking. And so if we can't leverage our resources by educating people and making them aware and making them interested, we cannot do this on our own, which is the reason I'm so excited about what Susan's doing in Antioch Church and what so many other organizations are doing, because my office is a drop in the bucket to solve the problem, but we are trying to leverage our resources and with education. So thank you. Yeah.
And Susan, you were one of those people who, in your community, decided enough is enough. We're going to do something about it right here.
Right.
The organization that you lead, UnBound, is incredibly active. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you all are doing?
Well, we started in 2012, and our mission has been to mobilize the church and activate the local community to fight human trafficking. And so we just saw the faith-based community has a lot to offer. We have attorneys and law enforcement, teachers, really everything are in our congregations. And so if we could educate them on being the eyes and ears and let that spread throughout the community, then we could really make an impact. And so that's how we started, and really landed on prevention is the number one thing, because we don't want this to happen to anyone. And so we've got great communicators in our community that we could train. And so, our Houston team educated 10,000 students in public schools on how to stay safe. We've just finished about 6,000. And these are volunteer trainers that we can train that are getting in, just in the schools. And that's not including, I think we did 84 professional trainings. And those are people like social service providers, law enforcement, attorneys, counselors, just like this movie shows. When the community is educated, and I would say saturated, then we can really say what we like to say is not in my city. Like, we're trying to make Central Texas a hostile environment for human trafficking to flourish, and that's by really education and awareness. And so we really major on that. We've formed, you mentioned the Heart of Texas Human Trafficking Coalition, and because no one agency can do it, but these guys, they're the heavy lifters, and then we're boots on the ground, I think, because without the policy and the laws, we can't do what we do. But we can take that and then bring it home, work with our law enforcement, our DA's office, bringing those real victims and their cases to them and advocate for those survivors. And so it works.
And you do a lot of work with survivors and helping the victims after they've come out.
Right.
Tell us about some of those initiatives and how your community is working to help the survivors heal.
Okay. Last year, UnBound served about 54 survivors just in Central Texas, around the Waco area. Within our coalition, we had about 119. So if that shows you the prevalence of this, and that's labor and sex trafficking, mainly sex trafficking victims. We had a few for international students, but most of ours are international victims, but most of ours are domestic American young boys, young girls, and young women. And they come from all different places where it's the boyfriend pimp that lures them in this. It's fraud where they thought they were answering an ad for a modeling job, and our law enforcement, our detective we work with, her ad popped up, went over there, and it was the first one. Really, she was just like, "Thank God you're here," because she had been answering the ad for the modeling job, went there, and a huge guy takes her paperwork, forces her through prostitution until she was rescued. We go into juvenile detention centers, group homes. We do prevention in middle schools with at-risk kids, and a lot of times they're making the outcry. They are getting these messages from older men on their social media. So we try to build relationships, do prevention to help them identify that, and then they're telling us what's going on. And then we can work within the agencies in our community, whether it's law enforcement or other social service providers or the school or the counselors, to try to get them the help that they need. But it's very, very rewarding, but very hard work.
From a practical perspective, for folks in here whose communities may not have an UnBound in their neighborhood, what can churches, civic organizations do right now to start?
Yeah, I would say number one, have the Attorney General's office has been awesome. She's come and taught, you've come. So I think getting agencies like UnBound, and there's other great organizations within communities, having them come into the congregation and educate the congregation on what's going on. We would just host an UnBound night and just train the people. And people care about this issue. The faith-based community cares about this issue. And so the education is really important so they can be the eyes and ears, just like this film shows. When they see cars going by and they're like, what's up with that? We had someone, we train in our community, and someone noticed a girl in a big rig truck and said it didn't look right. And turned out it was a 15-year-old that was being trafficked. So, we get phone calls from hotel people working behind the counter that have been to one of our trainings, and they're like, something's up with this, and law enforcement can go in there and identify these. So having people to come into our communities, our congregations, and train on what to look for is really important. Just educating yourself on our websites. We have literature and videos, things like that, so you can learn more. Volunteer with organizations that really help at-risk kids is super important. We're doing a fundraiser to support us, because most of us, like our organization, are supported by funds. So there's a lot that the community can do.
Well, thank you very much for the work that you're doing in Waco and around the world. I want to thank our panelists for being with us. Thank all of you for coming out for this important conversation. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
So when I started this, I knew we had a long road ahead of us, but I truly believe that we can stop this, that we shouldn't accept that we're just going to make a dent in it, that I really believe we can stop this. And it's just a matter of wanting to and putting the time and the energy behind it and the resources. Susan's the one making the biggest difference, that type of organization, but we all can make a difference. So thank you all for being here and for being interested in this issue that's, I think, so important to our state.
I would say what you were talking about, and I'm so thankful for your work, but it's a supply and demand business. So I think supporting laws like this, supporting our law enforcement to do the stings, because if there wasn't a demand for buying sex, then our children and our vulnerable people would not be at jeopardy to be pulled into this. And so that's a huge, huge piece, I would say.
Yeah, this is modern day slavery, and it's a scourge on our society and unfortunately on Texas. So, but the faith-based community, our churches, just a profound healing power of Jesus Christ, and just somebody that's gone through the pain of being a victim, and just the forgiveness that's found in the Lord. What a healing message that is to the victims. And then our church community has done just so much. What a great way to express love than from the church. So this is, it's horrific, but it's a great opportunity for the church to rise up and tackle this, because we can pass a lot of laws, and they're really important. What Ken Paxton is important, law enforcement, but it's our community and the impact what we can have, and having our eyes open is really going to stop this.
Thank you all very much. Please join me in thanking our panelists.